Greetings, Mindcrafters, and welcome to another Minecraft episode on this beautiful day. My name is Kimberly Quinn, and I am your hostess with the mostest on this Minecraft podcast, which is about becoming the boss of your brain. We need to become the masters of our cognition in order to live our very best life. And today, what I'm excited to talk about with you is sort of avoiding the bear climbed over the mountain syndrome. So right now I'm thinking of I've got just a slight inspiration today. Sarah von Brednek, I adore her as well as all the other great thinkers and writers, writers, authors, same thing, I guess. And just YouTubers and all these influencers. I just the inspiration is absolutely amazing. Sometimes I feel like my head's gonna kind of pop off because I get so excited. So anyway, today's inspiration, it got me to thinking back to when I was a kid, right? And I'm sure we all did this as kids when we were going on a long trip somewhere, a long road trip, and you start singing, the bear climbed over the mountain, the bear climbed over the mountain, the bear climbed over the mountain. And then what did he see? I forget. And saw another mountain. You know the whole story. And then how does it wrap right back around? What did he do? What did she do? What did they do? They climbed another mountain. And so it just goes in this loop. And obviously this is very fun as kids. So I'm sure the parents in the front seat are probably trying to swing their hands backwards to give us and not, get us to knock it off because it probably was extremely annoying. But as kids, we really like that. The only thing is, in reality, this is what got me thinking about this whole thing. And I read this little thing by Sarah von Brednek because I just barely I posted an Instagram post of when I was out in Keystone with my our oldest son and youngest daughter, having a grand old time. And we hiked up to the top of like above the tree line where it just looked like another planet. I can't even describe how gorgeous it was. Plus, it was a bluebird of a day, so you could just see the Rockies in Keystone, Colorado for miles and miles and miles and miles. And it just felt like you were literally on top of the world. Like I felt on top of the world. And I will tell you that that altitude thing is real. So, wow. And I'm in decent shape, not ready to run a marathon or anything, but I'm in pretty good shape. And I was like, trying to breathe, walking up there. The skiing was fine. So where is she going with this? I'm about to tell you right now. So this is the back bowl. It's like a double diamond, one diamond. I don't know. It's very, very, very steep. Doesn't really matter. And the skiing was fantastic. Again, the sun was out. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm kind of feeling like a badass in this moment. And I would just want to take a picture of the sign because it had the diamonds and it said North Pole, South Pole, something like that. I was also pretty proud of myself for hiking up in this thin, thin atmosphere. And that was all fine. And my son and daughter were great. We had the best time. We kind of cheered ourselves at night with a glass of wine over a steak, and all that was good. And then when I was reading Sarah's von Brednik's little blurb. It's like a daily meditation book. It's called Simple Abundance. She would actually use the mountain analogy with accomplishments and how that was a for real accomplishment. The climbing up there part, but also the skiing down the cliff. Well, not cliff, but there was snow. But it was a pretty intense pitch, which actually I love. Anybody who skis knows that pitch actually helps you turn. It's like my favorite. Soft pitch and a lot of soft bumps. That is my favorite. But anyway, circling back around, Sarah Van Brethnek talks about the mountain analogy with how we. Now she writes mostly about women. We'll just put it in brackets as people because we all do this too. That we often don't give ourselves credit, or we do, but not enough. And here, feeling like a badass up in that moment. But whatever that is, translate my back bowl thing, skiing, to whatever accomplishment you've had recently, or sometimes it's even just a compliment. People give us a compliment, a genuine, heartfelt compliment, like, way to go with that presentation. I could tell you wowed the socks off the boss, or whatever. And we so often downplay that stuff. We don't really stop and breathe and take it in. So it can be coming from somebody else, the compliment or the kudos or whatever, or it can just be ourselves. And we don't really sit with it and acknowledge that we just did something pretty great. Regardless, we can put that in air quotes if you want, regardless of what great is, because there's always context to great, right? Somebody who has physical limitations and does something, people without physical limitations, that we take for granted, right? That's maybe might seemingly be so small, but to them, it's like, having no physical limitations and running a marathon, given what it's like within the context of their bodies. That's just an example. Or, cognitive limitations and coming up with something amazing that way, or artistic or whatever. And we just, for whatever reason, and I don't, well, actually, I do know what it is, right? It comes down to self-value, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And then Sarah says, she said, should we slip for a moment and bask in the glow of accomplishment, we immediately feel the need to downplay our achievement, especially in front of our family and friends. Before we know it, we're practically denying we ever attained anything. And I just think that's true for a lot of people. And at a fabulous 58, and it's taken me a while, if I'm honest, and I am honest. I'm very honest, actually, especially with myself. It's taken me a while to be very, 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 very truthful. And I've gotten to a place where I sometimes catch myself still on occasion, and I stop and breathe and I just take in the goodness when people are saying it. It's been a long haul though, because many of us have had messages early on that have sort of put blockers up to letting the good in. I guess that's the best way to say it. So then she says, before we know it, we're practically denying we ever attained anything. But many successful people do revel in their achievements, covering the walls of their offices and homes with their photographs, magazine covers, displaying golden statuettes and awards on their mantles, or in specially built cabinets. They've succeeded, and not only does the world applaud them, they congratulate themselves. And I'll tell you, I said it. Well, I was gonna just like keep it on the DL, but I'm not good at that because, first of all, I don't do secrets because secrets are toxic. But this was never a secret; it was just more like private. But I don't really need to be private about it because I think just in the beginning, I was experiencing a little bit of this bear climbed over the mountain thing because I've joined an amazing mastermind group. I mean, they're just geniuses, and I can't even tell you how impressive they are, and it's not because they're wealthy, and they'll say the same thing. It's not because they're wealthy. These are very authentic people who have, a lot of them have like, amazing life stories that involve big, 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 big challenges and personal, things that have happened and all kinds of things, and they were resilient and just they're just amazing, amazing people. And when I'm thinking about, the time I've spent with them together already, and we go on, a few weekends a year, and discuss, things and how to improve. If you're trying to write a book, you're trying to whatever. They're just really great with all that, and I can't even tell you how impressive they are. And they are able to authentically applaud themselves, and we are authentically able to applaud each other, and not for 1 millisecond, and I've just really kind of only been with these people for a few months. Not for 1 millisecond did I smell, taste, touch, or anything, any kind of not a anything of arrogance. And none. There was none of that in the room. These are just good people who are just focused on following their authentic path, and all these other successes, with monetary successes or square footage or whatever, are all just like the side effects of everything they're trying to do. And one thing that was made very clear to me, not intentionally, or maybe it was intentional, I don't know, but just the vibe in the room is these are people who know their value, and it's not arrogance. I can't It's actually the opposite. It's very humble. And at the end of the whole weekend, the sort of grand poobah of the group, who I adore, had us all go around. It was kind of like popcorning. And he started with me, probably because I was one of the newer ones, I don't know, and said the most just genuine things about what I had brought to that weekend. They were real. It wasn't just fluffing feathers and just, and then I got to pick somebody, and it was just went around organically. And some people even got teary. And so the whole point is to be it is such a good practice. And just like we know what we practice, we inevitably get good at, right? We, for some reason, often have a hard time doing this. And I definitely felt, I wouldn't say I felt uncomfortable, but I didn't feel 100% comfortable either. I felt in that place of growth. I felt in a place that this is good for me. I know that this is good for me. I know I'm good for them. I know that we're good for each other. I just feel a little weird at this moment because there's so much goodness in this room coming in my direction. I just need to sit still and breathe. I needed to breathe deeply while all that good stuff was being said to me, and I'm well aware of where that comes from. For most of most of us, that is in our childhood, and we know that for the first 3 years of our lives, there's something called infantile amnesia. So you'd be like, "Oh, I remember being 2," and no, you don't, unless there's trauma or something like that. Yet 2-year-olds, 2.5-year-olds, they have full lives, right? They're talking about their birthdays and they're engaging with everybody in their lives. They've got all that life going on, but we really don't remember that. So think of all that life going on, all the things that may have been said to us or done to us or whatever, and that's all in the vault. So then fast forward to being your, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s on up, and we don't always know why it seems like there's an iron gate with a digital code to get through or a padlock, and why can't we let the good in it? And so I've worked on this for so long that at this point it's gotten much easier. I'm just being very truthful that in that moment, because I was with all new people. All we'd done is a few Zoom calls and a couple of phone calls, and I was in another place. I was out of state, and it was wonderfully, wonderfully um, full of growth for me. Full of growth because I felt just the right amount of a little taste of uneasiness that I knew was safe and healthy. I guess that's the best way to say it. And I totally grew from it. And just in the whole room, watching us be able to applaud for ourselves and each other, I really felt that I'd come a long way in that minute. Still not easy, but I'd come a really long way. And I watched other people be what I think. Obviously you can't tell what's going on in somebody's in their own rib cage, right? But I saw a few others. I think that were in a place similar to I am where I am, where they were listening, breathing, taking it all in, and still just having to really focus on sitting still with it because it was just little tiny bit, a little tiny bit hard. And I know, again, I'm as honest gets. I also, I'm actually having this insight at this minute. I was not having it on the mastermind weekend, though it's definitely clear just talking with you in this minute. I'm also the adult child of alcoholic parents with also a lot of mental illness going on in the house, and I'm the oldest. So I was definitely, well, actually, I was a combination of the golden child because I did a lot of achieving, and also the scapegoat because I also was blamed for most of what went on in the house, and that's a weird combination. I don't think that's very typical. But as far as the achieving, that can't I'm being reflective in this minute, so candid and so honest with you all, because this I literally didn't plan to say this part, is that the bear climbing over the mountain thing, I learned that I had to achieve to feel good about myself. I couldn't just be. I had to achieve to I'm getting like a chill right now up my neck. I learned that I had to achieve. So it was constantly, what's next? What's next? What's next? And then that was through high school, got into college, and um, of course, I have a fast mind, so it wasn't that my grades were always A's. That's not always true. Though I did have some runs of that, and then I would, get distracted, whatever. But I was constantly, and then it was graduate school. Of course, I wanted to be an MD before I, eventually became a PhD. And I realized in college that as much as I'm definitely fascinated by science, that was really about the shame underlying. It's kind of like that typical, that classic adult children of alcoholics ACOA thing for the oldest child. If you don't want me, you're sure as heck going to need me. And that's why so many of us responsible children, the golden child, the hero, whatever, go into becoming a doctor or a nurse, definitely anything that involves a uniform, like the police force, the firefighters, definitely the military, because we need to seek our honor on the outside of us. And I realized I had this bear going over the mountain thing for a really long time. And I got better at work in progress, work in progress, work in progress. And then there's still part of me, and now part of it I got to separate because I'm also just authentically interested in things. So it's not all that, But there's definitely, especially in my high school, college years, I was definitely, metaphorically speaking, looking for badges on the outside, no question. And then, one degree after the other, and then achieve, 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 and then in my recent last 10 years, at one TED Talk, that wasn't enough, so did another one, then Psychology Today, 1 or 2 articles wasn't enough, 5 wasn't enough, how about 30? Okay, good. And now and so, and that's all fine because I've authentically been interested in all that, very much so, especially in this last 10 years. It's not the same sort of, I'm further along the journey, so it's not all of that bear climbed over the mountain, it's sort of a mix. But I've realized now that, letting the good in, that's been a real long haul for me, a really long haul when people at Champlain have said so many nice things to me. The St. Mike's College community has always said so many nice things to me. And I used to literally not even hear it. I just walk around and they'd say something great about the thing you did, the thing you wrote, didn't even hear it. And now I'm starting to really to let that in because realizing where it came from, a whole lot of damage was done early on. I'm not saying with blame, I'm just saying it in a matter of fact, observant way, because I'm way past that. And the point I'm saying it for is because hopefully if there's or if there are any of you listeners out there who've also had all kinds of things happen and younger, and you're now trying to really work through that and heal so you can let the good in. The purpose of me telling you this is that keep at it because each and every step, even if it seems so minute, is getting you further along the healing track, and sooner or later you will cross that finish line with both arms up in the air. Oh, I'm just going to add this in because it sort of supports what I just said. Because Sarah talks about, and we try to trace this back, right, to this unnurturing behavior, from way back when. And she talks about the parental approval that never came. Definitely true for me. It just nothing I ever did was good enough. An A wasn't a good enough. Another A wasn't good enough. Even when I dropped to D's, they didn't notice. I mean, it's just things like that. Skiing medal, skiing, none of it mattered. So we take that into our adulthood. And then she says, decades later, because we've been conditioned to believe that nothing we do is ever good enough, we continue this destructive cycle of withholding approval from ourselves. When it comes right down to it, all that applauding on the outside when the world does respond to us is great. We should breathe, do the best we can to breathe and let that in. And if that doesn't happen, we need to applaud ourselves. And Sarah got into a kind of a pattern like I did. She talks about over a 5-year period. She did a bunch of things. She said, I narrated a 12-part series for public radio, launched a national syndicated newspaper column, wrote and published 2 books, gave numerous lectures and workshops. And she's talking about on the surface, she looked great. She looked successful, right? And then when she looks back, she said that she now, sort of recognized this frenzy to succeed. That's how she puts it. Was in fact the bear climbing over the mountain syndrome. Um, and she talks about sort of caving into this self-destructive illusion of believing that the next creative project would be the one and would bring her this recognition that she'd been hungering for her whole life. And I can really relate to that. I can really relate to that. And then she kept thinking like, oh, the big break will finally arrive. The brass ring, would at last be within her reach, or her ship would come in. And then she says, surely the world would notice in a meaningful way my next project. And I can relate to her so much. So this is the message today is first, like anything else we've talked about in the Minecraft podcast, you've got to first become aware of whatever it is, of what is working and what isn't working, because we cannot do what we do not know, right? We cannot do what we do not know. So once we have this awareness, then we become responsible. My friend Dr. Dave says that all the time. And that means whether it's other people or it's us, we need to realize that if the world is not when the world is applauding us, breathe and accept it and take it in, because the brain, cognitively, neurologically speaking, remember, the brain loves repetition and patterns. So if the brain is going to look for and bask in goodness, it needs to be able to recognize it. So we don't want to just let these compliments go in one ear and out the other. We want to stop, make eye contact with that person, breathe deeply while they're saying these things, even if we have to be comfortable being uncomfortable like I was a few weekends ago, to take it in, take it in, take it in, to start paving that new neurological pathway of receiving all these authentically good messages to ourselves, to rewire the hard drive. This is so important. And if that doesn't happen, then we tell ourselves these things and also blaze a new neural pathway, a new trail for the goodness. And that is what we're talking about. So then Sarah says, although it may crown you queen, or I'm going to put in brackets, or king for a day, the world cannot confer the recognition that will make you feel fulfilled. Only you can. So that's it. I would say that is just a wonderfully natural place to sign off. And this is Kimberly Quinn signing off from the beautiful, gorgeous, sunny Northern Vermont. Have a mindful day.